Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or shall I say good morning, since we are all from sales. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Joy Uy, and for today, I will be discussing about the title, of course, of what you're supposed to watch, and it is 8 ways on how to augment your sales. Now, let me share my screen to you to give you a little more background about what we are going to discuss for today. Here you go. So just a little introduction about myself once again. My name is Joy Uy, and I have been with the real estate industry for the past 15 years. And at the same time, I am also a life coach, and I am a Neuro Linguistics Programming practitioner. I'm certified just this year. So just to run through it, you can read it, but there will be more there will be more things that we will be discussing about sales, not just about real estate sales, but a lot of things about sales. And these are 8 ways on how we are going to do it despite the pandemic. I am the founder of the Joy Project Consultancy. And the Joy Project derived from my name, of course, but not just that, but also the things that we wanted to undergo in life. And we all wanted to be happy, right? But the Joy Project Consultancy has two main objectives. The first one is, of course, to value heart, and the second is for us to amplify our skills. So this afternoon, we hope that this objective will be realized. And at the same time, I would like also to thank Limitless Power Coach for inviting me over. So before we start, I would just like to ask a few questions. How many of you here are from sales? Probably most of us are from sales. Let me check my Zoom. Are most of us from sales? So I believe that you all are. But the second question is, for the year 2020, or shall I say, since the pandemic started, have you had your sales? So that is the question that we are going to answer. But at the end of the day, what we wanted you to have is not just for me to give you inputs, but of course to ask yourself how you fared so far in your sales life. So without much ado, here is the first slide for our sales talk. I mentioned earlier that there will be 8, but definitely there are a lot more. And since we are only given 30 minutes to an hour, we will try to compose everything as much as possible in several words, but definitely there will be more to it. And probably some of these learnings you've already heard, but we know that there are several strategies and there are several structures for us to be able to have that sale that we have been longing for. Now, there are two things, or probably shall I say, there are two categories on how we want you to remember sales. The first one, or the first category, would be the self, and the second one would be the selling part. Now, probably some of you would ask me this question: why would we start with the self? For obvious reasons, we definitely are the salesperson. And as the old cliche goes in sales, you definitely have to sell yourself first before the product, before the brand, or before the company. Now, what are those things that we need to think about when we say self? The first one would be the source. Now, when you enter sales, probably most companies or most organization would always jump to the sales cycle, or probably knowing the product or knowing more about the company or the corporation that you are in. But let me tell you this. Before you enter sales, I think the first thing that you should remember would be the source. What about the source, Ms. Joy? Why do we need to know about this? Remember, our objective here is first to value heart, and second is to amplify skills. So we will be concentrating on your heart first. Who among you here, since you were a kid, thought of becoming a salesman or a salesperson for that matter? Probably some of us would want to be a lawyer, or perhaps some of us wanted to become a musician, a singer, or an artista, or probably become a doctor. But none of us would ever think of being in sales. But reality strikes. So probably after college, you're thinking of, you know what, I wanted to be in sales. Why? Of course, all of us would say, I'll be a hypocrite to say that I wanted growth, I wanted to, of course, those are parts of it. But most of us from sales would definitely think about money. Now, why is it important for us to know the source? Is it enough for us to know about what we are going to earn? Is it enough for us just to think of the millions that we are going to have? For me, or at least for all of us, or maybe we are not just noticing it. It's important for us to know our whys. It is important for us to know our goals. Maybe you would think, or you would remember some salespersons who didn't really make it, or to some there are some people who really did well at the start but didn't do well in the end. And we need to go back to that source. Miss Universe Philippines has just finished, and one of the answers there of the winner, she said that in whatever it is that I will be doing, I always wanted to go back to my core. And that is the challenge, ladies and gentlemen, salesmen and saleswomen in this webinar. The main source should be the most important thing, and that is your core. What are your whys? Is it your family? Is it your loved ones? Is it recognition? Is it award? Or something that has to do with your self-esteem? You have to remember the source, because no matter what happens in sale, that is going to be your core. You will always go back to this. Babalik at babalik kayo kung bakit. Why do you want to be in sales in the first place? And let me tell you that being in sales is not a walk in the park, and probably most of you are. Every day of our lives, we are into sales. We are trying to sell not just products, but we're also selling ideas. I am selling this idea to you. So apart from my real estate experience as a speaker, I'm also selling to you this idea on how to augment sales. But the question is, how much are you willing to sacrifice in order for you to get that sale? So remember, it's the source. What are your whys? What are your goals? The second part, or the second one, would be the space. Maybe some of you would think of space as a certain area that is not occupied. Well, there is some truth in it, but I placed here two things. The first one is mental space, which is very, very important these days. I would ask you, the first question I asked was, how is your sales during the pandemic? But the second part that I will be asking is the most crucial of all. How is your mental state during the pandemic? Because you know what, no matter how skilled you are in terms of closing sales, in terms of presentation, in terms of getting clients, for as long as your mental space is occupied and is full of probably not really garbage, but when there are so many things occupying your mind, especially doubt, your skills is not even relevant. Even if you are so good at your last sale, we even say you are always good as our last sale. But no matter how good you are, if your mental space, if your mental, what do you call this? You are doubting your mental capacity in terms of, how will I be able to do this? It's pandemic. How will I be able to convince my clients? They themselves aren't convinced that they will be able to earn. So the mental space is very important. And let me tell you this, I am one of those people whose space in my head is overly crowded. I am into overthinking, not because I wanted to do it, but because it's really part of me. I overthink things out. But the challenge is, you can always come out of it as a victor. How do we do it? That is the third one that we are going to talk about. Now, we've already mentioned about mental space. The second one would be physical space. Now that we are all working from home, how are we doing? Are we the type of person who just goes around the house working, or do we really have a certain area where energy flows? I've read it in one of my Neuro Linguistics Programming class. I've learned it that having a certain space, not just physical space, but also creating an organized space in your head could really help you in achieving your goal. Now, how is that possible? You have to create a certain area, or you have to think of a certain area in your house wherein all of the energy thrives. I don't know, probably it's in your room, your favorite place on earth, or perhaps in the living room, or any space where you think you have this laser focus so that you could concentrate on the sales that you wanted to have. Now, Mr. How is this relevant? We really wanted to know how to increase our sales. Let me tell you again, no matter how skillful you are in terms of the sales cycle, or no matter how good you are in sales, if you don't have that mental toughness in this time of pandemic, it's nothing. I know a lot of great salespersons before pandemic or before the new normal. They're really doing well. But when doubts happened, when worries happened, they're all over the place. So what we need is space. A space in our minds and a space in our house for us to thrive and for that energy to go inside us or to be with us so that we will have that laser focus. So first we have source, and then second we have space. So remember guys, we have two categories here. The first one is about the self, and the second we will be talking about the selling itself. But let's finish first the first category, which is the self. The third one would be structure. I have never, or have you ever thought of a very successful organization or a person without a structure? Have you thought of it? Can you just like pinpoint one who has just this random schedule wherever they want to or whenever they want to? Well, some of us can work that way, but remember that structure is also the key to success. I have placed here first is the schedule and second is the system. Like what I've said, we don't have enough time to discuss about this because each item that we have probably would take one whole workshop for us to be able to do that. But I would just like to run through all of this for you to think. The first question, the source, is that why am I in sales? Why do I want to be in sales? It's the why. And the second would be your space. What does it entail for me to be able to concentrate so that I will have the sales that I want? And the third would be the structure. How am I going to do this? Check your schedule. Since the pandemic started, how are your schedules? Are you the type of person who wakes up anytime they want? Or are you the type of person who follows a specific schedule, but in the end, cannot have sales? Remember, ladies and gentlemen, sales people, that all of these things, the source, the space, and the structure, they are all very much needed in order for you to have that sale that you always longed for, especially in a time of pandemic. Now, for the schedule, remember to create a structure for you. If you were going before the pandemic, what was your schedule? We all have our specific schedule. We wake up at, well, we're sales. We don't have a specific time frame on how we do things, but like I've said, structure is very important. Perhaps when you were still going to work, you wake up perhaps at 7 a.m. and then what time do you go to the office? You allot 2 to 3 hours of traffic just going to your office. And then when you get to the office, what do you do? After office, what do you do? Before you go to bed, what do you do? Benjamin Franklin said that the key to success can be found under the alarm clock. So, have you found it already? How is your schedule? Right now, we are very lucky. We are still very lucky in terms of the time that we have. As salespeople, we have always been free to do whatever we want. We are not the 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. kind of people. We have our own time. We are our own bosses. We are CEOs of our own time. But the question is, what have you done with your time? It's already November 10. How was your sales the entire year? We are only given 1.5 months or perhaps half, because usually December is for vacation already for salespeople, because you need to have that to gratify yourself by December that you have done this much for sales from January to November. But how is your schedule now at this pandemic? Have you checked it out? Do you have that mindfulness within you to check, you know what? I've just been watching Netflix the whole day, or I've been doing siesta from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. after I wake up at 8 a.m. The second one would be your system. How are you nowadays? How is the way you carry yourself? Are you still learning? Do you still want to improve yourself despite the pandemic? Have you created a system within you that would congratulate yourself that, you know what, even if it's pandemic, you really tried. You started calling clients and you have created this system within you that you will be proud of. What kind of language do you use when you speak to clients? Have you improved so far? Because right now it's very challenging, especially getting appointments in Zoom. How will you capture your client if you do not create a system within you? So that is the first category. Those are the first three of the 8. Let's repeat that. First would be the source, your why. Ask yourself, why am I even in sales? Why am I doing this? Is it just really for the money? Remember that when you are in sales, you wanted to create not just money in the end, but you have to remember that you have to trust the entire process. You have to go through the entire cycle. It's not just about you and the result. It's about you and willing to undergo the entire process. But there's also a danger in structure. Let's just say there's a salesperson named Ligaya, and the other one, let's just name her Nena. Ligaya is the type of person whose schedule, she's very prompt, she has all of these ideas, and she has all of these schedule ahead of her, and yet she still does not have results. The danger here is that maybe you are just working in a mechanical mode or in a robotic mode. So remember that it's not just about schedule. You also need to check your results. Process the results. It should go hand in hand. You shouldn't only be looking at the entire thing as a result, but also you should be looking at it in the way that you process things. Process and result. I'll give you a quote. I'll read it to you. Boundaries are basically about providing structure, and structure is essential in building anything that thrives. Like what I've said, do you know any organization or a person who is successful in his own way that does not have structure? Even the building, I'm from real estate, even the buildings that we create, it has a structure. The foundation should be strong. It follows a specific strict structure and a system for that building to be sturdy. So how much more if you wanted to have a sale? Having a sale needs structure. Now, why is it important for you to know more first about the self? These are the values we have. We could probably think of several values, but right now I can think of 3 things that could be valuable to you for you to have a sale. The first one is discipline. To have structure means having discipline. To have a schedule means having discipline. To know your space for you to have a certain physical space in your house or a mental space in your mind. It's for you to be efficient. How will you be efficient if you are full of anxiety and worry? You need to create that space. You have to know your source. And all of these values will align. But we are just getting started. We just started with yourself. Now, the second part would be the selling. I know most of you will be very interested with this, but I will not tell you anything that's new in terms of the terminologies. The terminologies that I will be using, if you have been with sales for quite a while, would be very familiar. And I think you have heard this from someone else. But like the first part of our webinar, it's very important for you to create a structure. You have to know first yourself. Know your what, know your why, know your how. And now that you are fully convinced that, yes, I really am into sales and I am willing to sacrifice and I am willing to embrace all that there is in sales, all the frustration, all of the failures, I am willing. So now that you are 100% ready, you are now ready to sell. And these are the basics of it. And all of you know this already. So for each sales cycle, the fourth one would be the sales cycle. For each sales cycle, I will be discussing two important things. The first one is prospecting. And I'm sure that 50 to 80% of the time, we do prospecting. I have three businesses as of now. I have my real estate business, and then the second is my Joy Project Consultancy, which is a training business. And this pandemic, I am just so blessed to have a third business. It's a food business. It's called Graze and Deli charcuterie. And with the three businesses that I have, all of them entails a lot of prospecting. Because definitely these people will be our clients. And like what I've said, 50 to 80% of the time, we do this. But there are two things that I would like you to be reminded of. How are your targets? Are you meeting them? I would like you to meet. They actually sound like a robot, like R2D2 or whatever robot you could think of. But I have two things that I would like you to, two things that I would like you to meet. The first one is Cassidy, and the second one is 135. I think one of my sales representatives are here, and she very well knows those acronyms, The first one is Cassidy. In order for me to remember the things that I need to do every day, I have my acronym. It's Cassidy. Cassidy means the first one is calls, A is activities, the S is sales, the other C are clients, and the D would be for my documentation. So every day, I need to know what I'm supposed to do, and this is how I structured myself, so that no stones will be left unturned. And the second one would be 135. I call them 135 because these are our targets. So every day, if we do not have a sale, we ask ourselves, how is Cassidy and how is 135? But of course, you don't have to follow them. These are just us. We just created our own acronyms for us to be reminded that there are things that we need to do and there are targets that we need to set. Now, the 135 means one prospect per day, 3 site trips in 1 week for real estate. This is for real estate, by the way. And 5 closables in 1 month. So I'll repeat, that's 135. But in relation to this, to prospecting, we know that we need to get at least one new, the old clients are not included, one new client per day in this pandemic, because before pandemic, we could get as many prospects as we can. So you have to set targets. Sometimes we ask ourselves, you know what, I've been so tired, I've been doing sales calls every day, and yet still I do not have sales. But remember, how are your targets? How's your daily? How's your weekly? How's your monthly? Because at the end of each quarter or at the end of the year, this is not just based on a whim. Your target shouldn't be based on a whim. It should be based on something that is feasible for you on a daily basis or probably even an hourly basis. That's why we discussed about schedule. And the second one would be quality check. How are your clients? Yes, probably you have hundreds of prospects, but how are they? Are they relevant to the kind of product that you are offering them? I got used to being in the premium product because I used to work for a real estate company that caters to the high end market. So we definitely need clients that caters to the kind of product that we are offering. So how's the quality there? I also have a business for food, and it's a charcuterie business. And it's not just any food, it's luxurious food for probably most Filipinos. So I need to check what kind of clients am I getting right now. So that's prospecting. Remember, first is to set targets, and second, you have to check not just the quantity, but also the quality, so that at the end of the day or at the end of the year or quarter, you will know that, you know what, I think these are the kind of prospects that I'm looking for. And I was able to set those targets. Never question yourself that you do not have a sale if you cannot even set targets for your prospects. So that's the first part of the sales cycle. We have several more to discuss. So I hope I can do this as much as I can, and that will be understandable. And at the end of the day, we will have a call to action for us to have sales even in the pandemic. Next, now you already have an array of clients that you can call or make a follow up, or we call it telemarketing. So, what are you going to do with all of those clients that you have acquired? The question here is, let's go back to the self. Let's go back to space. Let's go back to source. One of the one of the things that most salesperson always forget is that follow up and telemarketing is the essence of it all. No matter how good you are, no matter how charming you are in getting clients, if you do not call them back, then it's nothing. I used to be a sales director and I handled several people under my team. And I've been handling people for the past 13 years, 15 years. And this is the culprit. It's the follow up and the telemarketing. I would always ask them, oh, you have several clients. What happened to them? Then they would tell me, you know what, miss, I just feel that they're no longer interested. Or whenever they call, they don't have the patience. And like what I've mentioned here, it should be no stones left unturned. They don't have the patience to unturn each stone. You'll never really know, because you'll be surprised that those clients whom you think that will not be buying are the ones who will buy from you. And then the second one would be the telemarketing dynamics. There are several. I have created, this is one whole workshop. It could last from 30 minutes to whole day just for telemarketing alone. But I will tell you about two things for telemarketing dynamics. I am not a fan of spiels. Yes, contrary to what you know, I'm not a fan of spiels. It's important for you to have probably a mental note of what you're going to say, but the exact spiel and reading it, you will be call center-ish like, and you'll be like a robot. It doesn't sound genuine and sincere. So the first one in telemarketing dynamics is for you to have a mental note in your head, and you already have, again, a structure. What if he says yes? What if she says no? What am I going to say? And if she says yes to my no or no to my no, what am I going to say? Am I making sense here? I have created a flow chart on how to have a really good telemarketing, a really good telemarketing and productive day. The first thing is that have a mental note, create a structure or a workflow, a flow chart. And then second, you should have that sincere or genuine care for your clients. You just do not make a call for you to introduce a brand. You make a call for them to know the benefits of what you are asking them to buy. So, two things for telemarketing: no stones left unturned. You already acquired all the prospects that you have. So, no stones left unturned. Call them one by one. You have all the time in the world. Laser focus, remember? Look for a space in your house with good internet and with good signal, because the signal here is really bad at home. And then thrive in that energy, thrive in that space that you've chosen. And then, second is, apart from the mental note that you have created, you have to be sincere. You have to be genuine. What is your edge over those calling? I've received so many calls, especially during the pandemic, about credit cards. I've received calls selling several items. But what is your edge in comparison to those people who's just been calling you in a mechanical way or in a robotic manner? So remember those things for telemarketing. Presentation, my favorite part. How is my presentation today? How is my content? And how am I in terms of body language and eye contact? Yes, I know that this is virtual, but body language and eye contact is still very necessary, even if it's just virtual. All the more that it's harder. It's harder because I cannot see you right now. I'm just looking at my presentation as if I'm talking to myself. But how is the content of my presentation? How is my body language? How am I getting across? Are you understanding it? It's the same way on how you present to your clients. There are still presentation that is live or personal. Nowadays, I have had several clients whom I met on a personal basis to show several properties. But most of the time, we present through Zoom. And I want you to remember two things again. It's content and language. And under content would be your organization of thoughts. I'll go back to structure. Remember that in everything that we do, structure is really, really important. Imagine if you are not prepared. By the way, in order for you to create a structure, you need to be prepared. And the other way around. For you to be able to prepare things, you have to be structured as well. How is the organization of your thoughts? When you speak to a client, do you just jump from one topic to another? Do you sell them the features or do you tell them about the benefits? I'm from real estate and this pandemic is really crazy. There are clients who wanted to take advantage of foreclosures, but there are clients who were really scared. So I have two types of clients, the positives and the negatives. How will I tell them about the good stuff, even if there is a pandemic? How is it beneficial to them? And here's the thing. Sometimes when we present, of course, in this presentation, I will be the one who's going to be speaking because I'm the speaker. But whenever you talk to clients, there's a 30-70 ratio. Probably it's no longer new to you, but 30% should be the seller and 70% should be the client. We always miss this part. We thought that since we are in a presentation, we are talking to clients, we have the stage in front of us. No, we are just the host. We ask questions, they answer us. We probe, we ask, because presentation is part of the negotiation. It's part of closing. Now, second would be your language. I know of several salespersons who are really good in terms of knowing the product, knowing the company. Probably they know everything about the history of real estate. But when it comes to language, when it comes to the tone of voice, that's the part where they are challenged. So how are we going to do this? If you already have a good content, it has to work hand in hand with your body language. But the most important thing, salespeople, is a third part, which is your sincerity and you being genuine. You know what? Sometimes, even if your content isn't that good, and even if your language is, You don't really have to speak in English, by the way, because you need to speak the language of your client. If they're Chinese, there is no way that you can be talking to them straight English like the way I'm doing right now. If your client is the type who speaks in Tagalog, whenever they speak to you in Tagalog, you need to speak in Tagalog as well, unless you don't know how to speak in Tagalog, of course. But sometimes, even if your content is not good in your language, but if they feel your sincerity and that you genuinely want to help them, even if you are selling a product, that's the best way on how to persuade them into buying your product. So for the sales cycle, we have prospecting, we have follow-up and telemarketing, we have presentation, and then my favorite would be negotiation. Okay, this might take a while. I will explain this as simply as I can. Who among you here knows the science of persuasion? One of my favorite topics in negotiation is the science of persuasion. This has been discussed to us. I think I heard about this 7 years ago. And from then on, I always look at these 6 things for me to be able to persuade clients. And not just clients, to persuade a friend, or simply just asking your spouse to go with you to a movie that he or she doesn't like. So the first one is reciprocity. I'll give you a concrete example in terms of sales. We always want to close clients, right? But there's a study that when you give something to a certain person, there is a huge chance that it will be reciprocated. This is not new to us. Most of us give gifts to our clients, even if they haven't bought yet. But it's not just about the tangible. It could also be the intangible. Giving an act of service to a client is one way for them to reciprocate the things that we wanted to have or for them to buy. For example, the best example would be, since I'm from real estate, some of my clients, whenever they go from one place to another, sometimes you offer them a ride. Or sometimes if it's Christmas or if it's their birthday, just a greeting that they are remembered is such a big deal. So that's reciprocity. There are several other examples, but we are running out of time. So I'm just going to try to give you examples as much as I can. Second is scarcity. What is scarce? In real estate, most of the time, those units that are scarce are the ones that are more likely to be sold. Because probably that is the bigger consensus. Most people like that specific unit. Or when we say, you know what, we only have 3 units left. Whatever it is that is unique, whatever it is that is most beneficial, but whatever it is that is most likely to get lost in the inventory, that is the best way for us to persuade our clients if that specific item is scarce. And then third would be authority. This is an example, would you rather listen to me or would you rather listen to someone who has been in the international arena? Would you rather buy from someone who is a newbie, or would you rather buy an item with someone who's already an expert? So definitely authority goes a long way. That's why at the start of this webinar, I mentioned to you my credentials. In every time a speaker speaks, credentials are very important. Unless probably I'm Zig Ziglar, I don't have to tell you my credentials anymore. So authority, it's important. Fourth would be consistency. We will go back to the example of reciprocity. What is consistent of you? Are you the type who only calls your client when you need to? Consistency, mind you, is not just about calling your client and telling them the same things over and over again. That's a red flag, actually. Consistency is not just about talking to your clients about the product that you are selling. Consistency is like sending them a happy birthday. Consistency is like offering them something else, perhaps another product that they really like that you talked about, or a service. Perhaps, you know what, sir, let me pick you up at the airport. So if you are consistent, there is more chance that this person is going to be persuaded by your efforts. This one is very interesting. Liking. Everybody likes to be liked, especially nowadays in the social media empire, in the social media in the social media generation that we have. Um, when we talk about liking, you have to think of a common ground between you and your clients. I'm from the province. I'm a Bicolana. Usually I ask my clients where are they from? What do they like to do? Because we are not just here to tell them about our products and sell. We are trying to create a relationship. And when you discover something that you and your client has first a specific connection that both of you likes, immediately there will be a circle of trust. I usually talk to clients. I usually talk to clients who are Chinese, and then I'm an Uy. And whenever they ask me, "Oh, you're an Uy," there's already an immediate connection that both of us are Chinese. So you always have to think of a specific way for you to have a common ground. And the last thing would be consensus. This pandemic, consensus is very relevant. How? In what way? People would ask, is it okay to buy properties right now? Or is it okay to buy luxurious items or whatever it is that you're selling, probably a car or an insurance, now that there is a pandemic? Perhaps if you are with insurance, there is a general consensus that yes, it is the best to buy. So remember, you have to take advantage of the general consensus of the public. Or perhaps in buying a car, well, you know what? It's the best time right now to buy a car because there are a lot of promos. So it's a general consensus. So these are the signs of persuasion. If you want to know more about it, I will be having another webinar about this, and I will be telling you about the details later. Now, for the closing part. The closing is very interesting because most people consider closing as the part wherein you ask for it. You ask for the check or you ask for the down payment. But closing actually is the entire thing. From the moment you presented yourself, you have started closing already. Closing is not just the part wherein you're finished with the entire negotiation and it's time for the client to decide. Closing is the entire sales cycle because you just do not close on the last part. You already have closing in mind from the moment you approached your client or from the moment you texted your client, from the prospecting part. So what if it's not closed? When do we know, Miss Joy, if it's the time to let go of the client or do we have to stay? The answer is in your sales cycle. First is you have to know the client, and that is through listening. That is through understanding. You'll be able to feel there's this instinct within you if the client is just dilly-dallying or the client is entirely not buying from you. And there's also this thing called maybe the client needed more time. You'll feel it. You'll feel it. As a salesperson, you have to have that sales instinct, and that's where closing comes in. Okay? So we only have a few minutes left. So for the first part of the self, we have source, we have structure, and we have space. And for the selling part, we're done with the sales cycle. So we're only in the fourth one. We have 4 more to go. So please bear with me. I will explain this as fast and as understandable as I can. Study. The 5th one is you have to study. Most salesperson will be okay and okay is not okay, most salesperson will just be contented with how they were for the past years. Because anyway, I'm selling like once a month. So there are two things when I say study. First is you need to self-evaluate. How's your growth as a salesperson? How are you? From the source to the structure, ask yourself this question. How have you been in comparison to how you started? Or if you are a new salesperson, have you evaluated yourself? How are you in terms of prospecting? How are you in terms of closing? How are you in terms of negotiating? Let us not settle. Being in sales, if your end in mind is to have more money, then settling is not an option. You have to evaluate yourself, you have to improve yourself. Because sometimes yes, of course, we all wanted to be lucky in terms of sales, but luck is not enough for you to be sustainable in this kind of industry that you have chosen. And then the second would be the market. Earlier, I mentioned about the pandemic and how it is. You have to study the market nowadays. How is it? Is it good for sales? How can we take advantage of this pandemic? And yes, even in uncertainty, there is opportunity. So we have to study, 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 study. And not just that, you have to prepare. Before you meet up with a client, research about the client. Oh, you know what? This client, I think I've searched it in Facebook and he owns a pet shop. I love pets. So I think that is a commonality between the two of us. I will start from there. So study the market, study yourself, study the client. So that's the fifth one. The sixth one would be the style. Oh, this is going to be very interesting. Most sales trainers would tell you what you should do, but I would tell you that each one of us has our own style. So my question is, what is your sales personality? Because sometimes we have our own personality, but when it comes to talking to clients, we have our own style. And I cannot tell you, there are certain things that should be imposed as a salesperson, but the style on how you close a client, we have our own strategies on how we are going to close a sale. Are you the charmer, or are you, I know some salespersons who are really very charming to Chinese clients. Like the moment they smiled, they already captured the attention of Chinese clients, whether male or female. I also know of sellers that are so good when it comes to being analytical that when the clients call them, they already know the certain percentages or the ROI that they are expecting. And I also know some sellers who are very efficient. Efficient in terms of all of the records are there and the clients really appreciate them. So what kind of salesperson are you? The downfall of most salespersons are to copy a style that is not really for them, or they don't even know their style at all. They don't know the kind of person they wanted to become when they're in front of a client. Because sometimes, people, there are introverts who transforms whenever they talk to clients and become as if they are extroverts. So what is your sales personality? That you have to know. And it's very critical for you to know. That's because it's essential for you to close a sale. What are your sales strengths? In terms of style, I know of someone who's really good at prospecting, that in every event that we go to, clients flock around her. But the moment the client agrees to go to the property, presentation wise, she isn't that good. So how are we going to manage our strengths? If you're good at prospecting, how are we going to be good at presentation? If we know we are good at closing, how are we going to go back at getting more clients? Because there are also others who settle because they know that they're so good at negotiation that they get lazy in terms of getting clients for themselves. How can that be, Ms. Joy? Good at closing but doesn't know how to get clients? Yes, there are. There are those who are really good at closing, but they get lazy, because getting clients is an entire relationship. It's like nanliligaw. And others just wanted to cut short, but come on, let's just close it. I don't want any relationships with any of my clients. I don't want to go through the entire process anymore. I just want an end to this. This is the result that I wanted. So you have to ask yourself, what is your style? What is your strength? Two more to go, don't worry. Second to the last would be strategy. I mentioned about this earlier. Now I have here general and specific because we all have strategies in mind. I have, like what I've mentioned earlier, I have 1, 3, 5. So 5 means I should have 5 closables in a month. That's my strategy. Others would be, they're really good at closing, that for as long as they have clients to talk to, they'll be able to close them. That's the general idea of strategy, but there are also specific strategies. And what are they? For example, there is a client whom you cannot close for so long, but there is a certain promo term that arrived. Now, specifically, what are you going to do? Because each client is unique. So you need to have specific strategies for them, but at the same time, you have a general strategy that you usually do as a salesperson. Last but not the least, sustainability. Earlier, we were talking about why do you want to be in sales? Yes, of course, we all wanted to have the money. But is it enough? Is that kind of mentality enough for you to sustain sales? So first, in order for you to be sustainable, you have to consider your small wins. And when I say small wins, for today, your targets probably are 10 prospects and we're able to get them. Congratulations. Because if you will just be thinking about the sale at the end of the day, you're going to go crazy, especially in this pandemic. So you have to earn points little by little for you to be sustainable, for you to be mentally healthy at the same time. But remember, for you to be sustainable, you have to remember the 7. First is your why. Why are you in sales? Why do you want to do this? Is there any depth to it to improve? You wanted your parents to be proud of you that you are earning for yourself and you are not asking money from them. The second would be space. How is your mental space? Is it very much occupied right now? I have, like what I've said, I have to admit the space in my head is really full and I have to, like a cup, you have to remove them one by one for new learnings to to be a part of them. And then third would be structure. Do you have a structure with you? And this is very important because in every item that I discuss, structure is very important. Now, that's for the self. For the rest, we have the sales cycle. And then after that, I'm going to click it. You have the sales cycle. You need to study yourself, your client, and the market. You need to know your style. This pandemic, you have all the time in the world to rehearse or know what your sales personality is. What is your strength? By the way, in study, you have to evaluate yourself. How are you doing in this different sales cycles? What is your strength? What is your weakness? What are the things that you can improve on? And your strategy. I have a paid webinar entitled Your Sustainable Advantage, and it's about strategy. It's a 2-day, 3-hour type of workshop. It's a workshop. It's a virtual workshop. So we'll talk about it more if you're interested with that. And sustainability, like what I've said, it's from the 1st to the 7th. And remember your small wins. I really, really love this quote. It says, rowing harder doesn't help if the boat is headed in the wrong direction. Most salespeople right now, and I'm not just talking about 1 or 2, almost everyone, almost all of my friends, not just in the real estate industry, but almost everyone in sales or probably even entrepreneurs are really working hard these days. But as what the quote said, rowing harder doesn't help if the boat is headed in the wrong direction. Imagine if you are so skillful, imagine if you are so good at closing, but you don't have the right mental space. You don't have enough source for you to be motivated, for you to be fired up. That's why you get burned out. That's why you get tired and you question yourself while you're in sales. I am one of those people. But little by little, we will be able to do this if the entire eight is remembered: source, space, structure, the sales cycle, study your market, study yourself, study your client, and you also have to have strategy. You also have to be sustainable. Did I mention all the eight? I think I did. So, my call to action is this. My challenge is, if you are tempted to question yourself or to ask yourself, where in those eight ways are you lacking and how are you going to do it? As I promised, I will not be giving you tips. You should do this, you should do that. Ask yourself, because every detail is really dependent on how you are as a salesperson. So that would be all. I hope you learned so much today. And thank you, Limitless Power Coach, for inviting me over. And it's time for some Q&A. Let me just there. Let me check if we have questions in the chat. Oh, we're from all over the Philippines are watching. There are people from Marilao, Tuguegarao. Hope everyone is staying safe despite this season, and advance Merry Christmas. And as you can see, we already have the Christmas spirit within us, also in our home. You can ask questions. Okay, we have a message from Judith. Thank you very much for the enlightenment. You're welcome. From Ashley Corpus, thank you for the insightful webinar. You're welcome. I hope that after this, you will be able to practice all eight. I know it's hard. I am preaching it, but I myself is having a hard time myself, especially I know that you will all agree, especially if your mental state is not aligned to your goals. It is very important to start with the self. So from Awi, thank you, Miss Joy. Very informative. Na-cover na yung questions ko. Okay. Thank you, Awi. But remember that the eight ways that I mentioned are still not specific, obviously, for time constraints. There are still a lot of ways that you can learn. As a matter of fact, there will be another one, but it's a paid webinar this coming December 16, and it's entitled The Sales Cycle Simplified. Later, I will tell you more about it. From Annalisa Centeno, thank you very much, Coach Joy Uy. You're welcome. So questions? Perhaps I will be, if you have questions, I will be asking for 2 or 3. You just have to type it. Okay. While I'm waiting for the questions, let me just share my screen once again. Oh, sorry. I need to open my PowerPoint for a while. Okay, let me read this. Thank you, Miss Joy. You are very articulate in your presentations. Thank you also for listening. That's from Wilma Rivera. From Cristel Romero. Thank you very much, Ms. Joy. This is helpful, especially for us young professionals. Yes. As a matter of fact, most of my webinars are for newbies, for salespersons who just started. And even those who has been with sales for quite a while, who stopped trying to learn more, shall I say? Because I know a lot of salespeople who are content in what they have because they get like sales once in a while. But we can always improve ourselves. That is the challenge. Okay, well, I'm waiting for questions. Let me just share the screen again for a while. Here you go. Okay. So I would like to invite you on December 16th. This one is a paid webinar. Limitless Power Coach will be sending you invites. So it's entitled The Sales Cycle Simplified. So earlier I mentioned about the sales cycle in the shortest way that I can. But for this specific webinar, I will be tackling more about it. I mentioned about the flow chart. I mentioned about I think there are also other inputs there that I wasn't able to discuss. I will be discussing more about it in a simplified manner and in the best way I can so that you can evaluate yourself. If indeed you have the right na magsabi na, ano ba yan, ba't wala pa rin akong benta, ginawa ko na lahat. Because I always challenge my salespeople that you can only question yourself, even myself, me included, if you have consummated or if you have done everything in detail. Well, obviously, I'm a structured person. So whenever, if I know that I haven't done my 100% in each item, I do not have the right to question why I'm not selling. Because I know that there can always be a lot of ways for you to make a sale. Let me check if you have questions. Yes, for the second one, the sales cycle, it's a paid webinar, and the Limitless Power Coach will be giving you the details about it. But it's on December 16th. Okay, so if there are no questions, let me just invite you again. I'm doing COVID season coaching sessions. It's a one-on-one session. Like what I've mentioned earlier, apart from being a broker, I'm also a life coach and a Neuro Linguistics Programming practitioner. So this is my rate. It's a very friendly rate on a per session basis. If you know someone, probably even your bosses who needs coaching, or maybe you have some downlines or salespersons with you, and this is not just about sales. This coaching session is not just about sales. It's generally about anything that you would like to discuss, any outcome that you are having a hard time with, especially this pandemic. So for the Joy Project Consultancy, we are accepting these coaching sessions. And please also follow us. Instagram is the joyproject.co and Facebook is the Joy Project Consultancy. Okay, let me check it again if you have questions. So far, none. And earlier, I introduced myself that I have three businesses. So if you have concerns on properties, if some of you here are from real estate, we have Ultimate Yields Realty. Do follow us. Also, the joyproject.co. And the food business that I mentioned, which is the charcuterie business, if you wanted Christmas gifts or corporate giveaways, do follow us at grazeanddeli.ph. Before I end my topic, I just would like to share this Bible verse to all of you. This is my Bible verse for the entire COVID season. I will not tire of sharing this. I think every webinar I always share this Bible verse because it kept me alive, both physically and spiritually. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, 8 to 9, we are hard pressed on every side but not crushed, perplexed but not in despair, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. So it's very self-explanatory. We may be having a hard time these days, but we will never be crushed. we will never be abandoned and we will never be destroyed. So that is God's promise to us. So thank you, everyone. If you do not have questions, let me check it again. Okay. Thank you so much for attending. Stay safe and God bless you all. I think we will have a picture taking. Is that correct? So I'll stop sharing this and there. How do we take pictures, by the way? Via Zoom. I'm inviting everyone to open their cameras for the picture taking. Is that all right? So I'm checking out my laptop and my phone for me to check the participants. Okay, so again, thank you so much for attending and thank you, Limitless Power Coach, for inviting me over. So I'll see you all on December 16. And this is Joy Uy from the Joy Project Consultancy. Have a Merry Christmas in advance. Bye.